Oh man, Dennis Hopper. So today we're going to take a look at American Dreamer, which was a documentary made during the post-production of Dennis Hopper's sophomore directorial debut, The Last Movie. The Last Movie, the very humbly titled Last Movie. It was almost probably the last movie for Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper, an interesting cultural character, you know. Because he's always this guy seen by many as this important American filmmaker, and definitely he is an important American filmmaker. Definitely quite a resume from kind of working alongside the great James Dean, and then following his own path, and then the success in the late '60s that he had with Easy Rider, and as his directorial debut, which people put him alongside Orson Welles and all of the great young directors, and then uh, and then the bombing out with his second movie, the last movie, which he went down to Peru, went down to South America, and made this crazy movie about a Hollywood stuntman making a western in Peru, and going native, and going crazy. And so he shot this movie. It was a low budget film, but Universal gave him the money, and then he came back to America and moved in this house in the middle of nowhere in Taos, New Mexico, because he wanted to be away from Hollywood to edit this film. And again, going crazy with the excesses of drugs and drink and women. And this was the early '70s, so it was the prime hippie movement. And Dennis Hopper was seen as this great cultural figure, but and the last movie was basically these guys who were able to get an in with Dennis Hopper. It's like, okay, let's chronicle the editing of this film in this house in Taos, New Mexico. And Dennis Hopper, he flies in the girls, and there's a scene where he's in the bathtub and having sex with the girls, and nudity and drugs and craziness, crazy parties, and in between. So, we see him in an editing room where he seems to be on the phone with people from the studio, and talking about release dates, looking at the rushes, the 35 millimeter rushes, in a rather confused. He seems like this rather confused expression on his face at all times, like he's not really sure what the fuck is going on. Really, he's not really. He seems in a certain lack of concentration at times. So there's the craziness, the wildness. According to Dennis Hopper and the filmmakers, he was. Well, I've never really read much about Dennis Hopper or seen interviews about him with the making of this film, other than the fact that he says he was always in a bad place, because this was the descent of Dennis Hopper into drugs and insanity that really didn't snap out until the early '80s, when he kind of cleaned up and decided he wanted to again become a mainstream, primarily actor. He had a couple more shots at a directorial, which had good results. I mean, Out of the Blue, I like. Many people don't like Out of the Blue, but I think it's a great movie. I think it's a great movie. Uh, so, but I cannot make it through American Dreamer. I've got the Blu-ray. The new Blu-ray from Etiquette Pictures is incredible. They are one of the great new Blu-ray companies out there. Incredible Blu-ray. A really nice booklet in that from Chris Pajali, which is kind of a background of in the early '70s, early mid '70s, the non-theatrical film distribution, the college circuit, college campus film theaters. The American Dreamer was a film that was exclusively distributed through on the college circuit. And this was apparently a distribution strategy that in New Line Cinema, the early distributors did that thing, just distributing to college movie theaters. Because colleges are full of kids with some money who want to pay. And according to this booklet, Universal, the only proviso on making this documentary was that it not be distributed in a real theater. It just, in an actual first-run public movie theater, just would be distributed on these college campus circuits. And apparently that rule was broken, and the film was pulled from distribution for many years. And then the American Dreamer became a very highly sought after film on the bootleg circuit and what have you. But yeah, I don't really see it as an interesting film. I see it as a very embarrassing movie where Dennis Hopper does not look good. He's very shabby and embarrassing. This guy going nuts and crazy. And the last movie, I've watched it once all the way through and tried to watch it subsequently, and it's just an embarrassing movie. It's just I don't know. There's this one great shot, one great scene with Dennis Hopper at night walking outside. It's this unbroken take where he starts walking, and he hears the people from the inside, and then he starts crying. It's such an emotional scene. I love that scene. I don't know why I love it. It's so great. I just remember that shot, that scene and it's just so good. But the rest of the scene is just this drugged out macho bullshit that's just so hard to follow. I mean, I think the strength of Easy Rider was the wildness of Dennis Hopper, but then in the editing, what happened is basically Peter Fonda and Bert Schneider, the producers of Easy Rider, basically took the movie away from him. Dennis Hopper tried to start to edit the film, and in a nutshell, everybody basically took the movie away from Dennis Hopper and worked on it and then released it, and it was the great thing. But they took it away from him. And I think he had a lot more creative control over the last movie, and it just descended into ego and drugs. I don't believe that this is a character that he's playing a villain in the last movie. I think that's bullshit to save face. I think it was maybe 20% character and 80% the real egotistical. I mean, if you do some history about Dennis Hopper, there's very black stuff about him, about his family life, and all of the stuff that went on in his life before Easy Rider as an actor in the '60s. It was a lot of weird stuff, and definitely I think he's admittedly there's a lot of stuff going on there. I don't a lot of the stuff I got from Easy Riders and Raging Bulls, and I think that book is very biased. So I'd like to read a little bit more about Dennis Hopper before I can really speak authoritatively on what was going on there and what was happening, because I don't know. It's just one biased book which goes on and interviews his ex-wife and interviews other people. But what I can tell you is from just this documentary, it makes him look very bad and very unfocused. And, there probably was a reason why he didn't get to direct a movie for... Out of the Blue was the next movie he directed, right? I mean, that was a long time. It was about a decade from this film or so. So, yeah, I mean, so The American Dreamer, a portrait of Dennis Hopper, an unfocused, drugged out, crazy Dennis Hopper, which can get a little bit tiring after a while because you're kind of like, what's the focus? Where is this guy? Is this all this hippy dippy, and then there's all these songs in the movie. Dennis Hopper is making a movie about the Rolling Stones, and you're like, okay, where is this going? I mean, I love Dennis Hopper. You love Dennis Hopper. We love the crazy stuff in Apocalypse Now and Easy Rider stuff and Blue Velvet. Oh my God, I'm not saying I'm not a Dennis Hopper fan. I'm absolutely a Dennis Hopper fan. I'm saying here he's no saint. He's self-admittedly no saint. He self-admittedly, did some wild stuff and damaged his career and had the, grabbed defeat from the jaws of victory of quite a few times in the 70s, but eventually came back and made a hell of a lot of money, and fortunately died too soon, died very tragically, but at least kind of turned his life around and made put together quite a nest egg, and became was able to do some of the quote unquote selling out, which I think wasn't really selling out, but play on his kind of persona as the crazy guy, and play that up, and able to do his art, and able to ever seen his house, where it was like his living room was like in the same room as his garage. Oh man, it was a real bohemian artist house, whereas like he just parked his motorcycles next to his like sofa. It's crazy. It was a crazy artistic pad, which I think is up for sale. Crazy, crazy stuff. Dennis Hopper, great filmmaker, incredible actor. You know, who knows if James Dean, if he hadn't lived a little longer, would not have self-destructed along with him. Or if he would have gone the Brando route. Maybe James Dean would have been somewhere between Brando and Dennis Hopper. But it seems like all those guys just self-destructed in their own unique, different ways. I mean, Brando loved to eat. And that that got crazy. And later in his urges, his impulses, his cravings got nuttier. And Dennis Hopper had nutty urgings, and all this crazy stuff. So who knows what James Dean would have done? I think he probably would have done it a little better than those two. I don't know. Who knows? That's just whatever. I hate the what ifs. Anyway, Dennis Hopper, a great actor, but American Dreamer, a great Blu-ray with some great liner notes. I would have loved a commentary track. I would have loved that. There's a documentary about the preservation of this film, but again, it's kind of tepid from the filmmakers, and I would have loved a real kind of just lay it all out there commentary track where you just say, okay, this is bullshit, this is great, this is it's been how many years since this guy has passed away. We can talk about him, the good, the bad, the real. I think that's we owe it to history, to not deify the guy himself. Didn't deify himself. He would probably say, I was fucked up at that point. It was a bad scene, So anyway, American Dreamer, an interesting documentary, and the Blu-ray is 100 times better than the bootlegs before. But again, the documentary and then the movie it's documenting, I have problems getting through it. I've not been able to make it through the American Dreamer even once. It just bores me, really. But still, it's Dennis Hopper and worth a watch. Maybe you might enjoy more than I do.